gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to PHLSportsNation, Flyers Nation edition. I am your host, Tomasino. And guys, you know how much I love you. And today, I am going to be the subject. I am going to be the guinea pig of a social experiment, a really important one. We are going to test out the age-old theory, never meet your heroes. We're going to find out if it's true or if it's just an old wives' tale. Now, anyone who's known me for a very long time knows that growing up, I had two heroes. My first hero was probably the greatest undrafted free agent of all time, Tim Kerr. The second was his team partner, his teammate, one of the greatest men to ever wear the orange and black, the incredible, the phenomenal, the immortal, the living legend, Brian Propp is here. Brian, I am so happy to have you here. It's incredible.
Yeah, goof off right at the start, you know. It's good to have you on.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this. I got to tell you just before we start, as you can see, I'm super excited. I've been as giddy as a schoolgirl since the moment you agreed to do this weeks ago. So I am absolutely so happy. It's crazy. All right, let's get right down to it. First off, Brian, welcome to the show. And how have you been coping with this whole COVID-19, the social distancing? How have you been staying active and staying sane, really?
So I've been in the house the last 3 months, working from home because I work with Wolf Commercial Real Estate, and I'm also the ambassador for the Philadelphia Flyers every home game, and I'm also the ambassador for Bancroft brain injury people. So it gives me a lot of time to do some different things. So I stay pretty busy. But as it's getting warmer, I'm looking forward to going to the shore on the weekends.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so let's start off. I wanted to discuss a little bit, basically about what you've been through in life and your hockey career, and then afterwards. So let's start off with you grew up in Saskatchewan, deep right in the center of Canada. Hockey is everything over here, and I just wanted to know, growing up, who were your heroes? You know who my heroes were. I just said it. But who were your heroes, and did you emulate or did you copy or pattern your game after anyone else?
Yeah, I was a little different because I liked my dad. My dad taught me how to play the game well, and it was pretty easy just to skate and play hockey and not think about anything else. In Saskatchewan, we only had two channels, and one of them was small, not clear. And so it was tough for me to watch any hockey. But on Saturday nights, we usually went to Toronto or Montreal. So later in my career, when I was with the Brandon Wheat Kings, I liked Jean Beliveau.
Wow! You can't have a better hero than that. What a class act, Jean Beliveau. Unreal. All right, so you get all your pre-hockey stuff done, your juniors, everything. The 1979 draft is upon us. It's the first draft when the NHL and WHA merger. It's the first one right after. You're selected 14th overall by the Philadelphia Flyers. Looking back at it now, I'm looking at the list, and other than Ray Bourque at number 7 to Boston and maybe Mike Gartner at number 4 to Washington, you were, without a doubt, the best player to come out of that draft. Being selected 14th, like dropping to 14th, did it cause you to play with a chip on your shoulder or something, say like, I'll show them all those teams that passed me by?
Yeah, no, not really, because I was just happy to get drafted. I know that there was a story going on with me when I was getting drafted. One of the other teams in the Western Hockey League wanted to draft me a little earlier, but they said that I was a bad liver, and so that's why I got drafted as late as I did, or later. But it was good for me because it gave me a chance to play with Bob Clarke, and where they won a couple Stanley Cups a couple of years before. And so on a winning team, and to be in the playoffs in my first 13 years. So for me, it was actually good to not get drafted earlier, because a lot of those top draft had struggled, and they didn't make the playoffs. They just played for themselves. So it was actually better for me being later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we in Philadelphia were the beneficiaries of that. Yeah, so you mentioned you're drafted by the Flyers. They're just a couple of seasons or a few seasons away from going to 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals, winning 2 of them. But, they had that reputation for that rough, in-your-face, Broad Street bully. Once they called out your name and you knew you were the selection, did you ever say, wow, those guys chose me? I mean, I don't play like them. Do I have to change my type of game? Or did that ever cross your mind at all?
No, because at that year, I was working on the farm when I got drafted, and I had to wait for the phone call to get drafted. It wasn't like it is now, where everybody waiting to get drafted. It's changed a lot. And in the middle of Saskatchewan, I still had to work, and so I was working on the farm. And then Pat Quinn and and the GM gave me a call, and I said, "Oh, that's great," And then I said, "What am I going to do from there?" But I didn't really know much about what the Flyers were doing. I followed hockey, but I just knew that they were a good team, and it fit my my play, because at that year, my last year in Brandon, I won the MVP of the league and the whole league, and broke the scoring title. And so, but 3 years before that, I won another MVP, and from the Melville Millionaires. I tell people when I was 15, I won the MVP of the league that year and broke all the records. It just for me, it was just playing around and having fun, and not kind of aware of what I was doing, but I was a good player. But I liked what the Flyers had to offer, because I modeled me after Bobby Clarke, because I was always the best practice guy, and played the same way, consistent, 2 ways player. So I probably, I loved modeling after what Bob Clarke taught me.
Wow. All right. So next season rolls around. You make the team. You're immediately placed on a line with Bob Clarke and Reggie Leach. You go out, you play your first game, you score your first NHL goal, you get your first NHL assist, you get 2 points in your very first game. As a young 18, 19-year-old, what was going through your mind? Tell us a little bit about that feeling, just getting on the ice with 2 legends, really, and then having an incredible debut like that.
Yeah, so I was playing with Bob Clarke and Reggie Leach at the start of the year. But to me, it didn't matter, because I knew I was a good player, and I would fit in. And, but with having Bob Clarke and, help me, talking with me every once in a while about where to go, how to go. And, he talked all the time on the ice, it helped me. But, for me, it was just natural, because I was, used to winning and scoring more. But I remember the first game, because it was against Bill Smith and the Islanders, and it was a game winner. And, then we lost, then we won there. And then I remember that the second game, we lost 9-2, and I was like, oh my God, what's the NHL going to be like? Is this what it's going to be like? And then it went on for 35 without a loss, which is still a record today. So, but it was a good start for me. But, having Bob Clarke as a leader for me, I was really quiet. I didn't say much. I just led by example with what he taught me. And, it took me a couple of years after that where I became a better leader for the team after Clarke left. And, Dave Poulin and Mark Howe were there, and Brad McCrimmon, so we had good leaders, and that really made a difference.
Oh, so you opened the door for those, those first couple of seasons there. I'm just curious. Did guys like Bob Clarke really take you under their wing? Like, did they spend special attention to you just because, you're just highly touted, guy coming in and they really want you to succeed? Did he like kind of take you under his wing and really make a point of, kind of like making you learn the ropes in his way?
Well, it was a little different than that. Like I was good friends with Bob Kelly. He was a left winger at that time too, and so and Frank Bays at that year, because we were both single, so we used to drink at the Kaminsky's and have a good time. But it was more about me being aware of what I'm doing, how to play, how to do things the right way, and to take my time and just play for the team. I mean, I could have probably had more points, but I played defensively on two. So I didn't care about points, but I wanted to win for the team.
Well, we're going to get to all that in a few minutes because it's fascinating to me. But I can't believe, and most of people might not remember this or know this, but as incredible as it may seem, Bobby Clarke and Reggie Leach probably weren't the greatest players you've ever played with. In 1987, you got to play on what most people consider the greatest hockey team ever assembled, the 1987 Canada team for the Canada Cup. You played alongside Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. Tell us a little bit what kind of an experience that was, and were you in awe, or were they just two regular players you were playing with?
Well, let's back it up a little bit, because my first year as a rookie, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals. That was number 1 against number 16, so that's why we played against the Islanders, and we ended up losing in overtime in the 6th game. Otherwise, it would have been different. And then for a couple of years after that, I got roasted for not scoring in the playoffs against the Rangers, and so I learned a lesson from that. So I had to pick up my game in 83 and 84 and 85, and then we went to the finals in 85 and 87. And that year in 87, the Canada Cup was in August, and so we had a training camp. So I was in good shape. And plus, I scored 28 points in the playoffs in the finals that year. So they knew I was a good player. And Keenan was the coach, and Bob Clarke was the GM, and we had 4 other guys with the Flyers on the team. But for me, it was I was the oldest player on the team at that time, with Gretzky and Lemieux, and so I think with my experience, either also playing for the World Championships in 82 and 83 in Europe, so I was learned how to play against the bigger rings. But it was really special because in 87, the Russians had to defect if they wanted to play in the NHL. So they were set to play like the Olympics. Every win meant something to them, but it was a 3-game series, which turned out to be the best hockey that I ever played in.
So you mentioned, with the Flyers, you went to 3 Stanley Cup finals, 80. You end up losing to the New York Islanders, who go on a 4-year run where they're just, the Bossies, the Trotzys, the Potvins, the Smith. They were just stacked, right? And then come mid-80s, you guys make the finals again in 85 and 87. In 87, you lose in Game 7, overtime. Must have been so heartbreaking. Bring us back a little bit to that time and just what kind of emotion and what was going through your mind, and how was the locker room, with such a heartbreaking loss?
Oh, in 87, but let's start with 85, because that year, Pelle Lindbergh was playing, and so he went into the finals, and then he died on a car crash, which made a big difference because, we kind of knew that having a goalie of his quality could help us win a couple cups. And so it was really bad for the team at that time. We had to learn how to deal with it. And that year in '85, we had Tockett, Zezel, Mellenby, and Smith as rookies. So they learned at the start how to become better. And at the start, we had good teams, and Mark Howe and Brad McCrimmon were unbelievable together. And Kerr and Poulin and myself, we killed the team. And then '87, Hextall kind of came up, and he kind of changed the game, the way he shot the puck. And it made a difference for us because you didn't have to do forecheck as much. And so I just remember that it was we played 26 games that year against the other conference, and Edmonton kind of whipped around and were impressed. But at that year, it was probably the 6 Hall of Fame in their prime in Edmonton. And plus we were beat up at the end. But so I think the people remember that we still forced them to a game 7. And I remember my game 5 in Edmonton, I had 4 assists. And so that was unbelievable, the best game that I ever played. And then we forced a game 6, with 6 minutes left in the third. I tied it, and then JJ won it. And then we forced a game 7. And unfortunately, we had a 1-0 lead. But Edmonton was powerful, and Hextall played out of his mind. And they scored with a couple minutes left to make it 3-1. But it was Howie was hurt. Poulin had ribs that it was. Ilka was masked out. Tim Kerr was hurt. So I think that people know that we did as well as we could, and we were beat up. And all I remember is that I was so tired. I didn't even remember what was happening after that. Just so beat up and tired.
Right. So you mentioned Hextall. After the tragic death of Pelle Lindbergh, Hextall comes up, and almost out of nowhere. I mean, maybe the people in the organization knew, but the hockey world was kind of surprised that he just played so well, and he kind of revolutionized the goaltending position with his stick handling abilities, right? So as a player that, like yourself, who was so defensively conscious, what was it like having a puck-moving defenseman really like him that probably was never seen before? Like, what was it like playing in front of a goalie like that?
Well, I think, we practiced at it all the time because Poulin and I were 2 of the best penalty killers in the 80s. I got a chance to play a penalty kill and play power play, so I got a lot of ice time. And, but we practiced on how, if they dumped the puck in on the one side, he stopped it, and then he kind of had a time to shoot it up. So we developed plays like that. So we had lots of 2-on-1s against, because they weren't expected. And so he shot the puck high and to center ice. And so we kind of made plays from that. That's why in '85, I scored 6 shorthanded goals that year, and that, but that started adding up, and it was really something with, and it was because we're both Brandon Wheat King alum at that time, so that there's, and now in the Flyers, Provorov is Brandon Wheat King alumni, so we got a lot of good names there.
Yeah, as is Nolan Patrick, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so listen, question. It's just because we were talking about Hextall here. What went through your mind the first time he shot the puck and scored a goal on the other net, and he was the first goalie in 100 years that actually shot the puck and scored? I mean, you were on the team at the time. What were you thinking? What were you guys like? Like, what was going through your minds?
Well, I know that I wanted him to do it more, because he scored the first goal, but he didn't want to take chances. He was too fair about that, but he could have scored a lot more. I told him all the time, just go for it. Keep scooting and scoring. but he didn't want to because if they missed or something like that, he could have scored like 5 or 6 goals that year. But we did it. So we kind of did the play where like you said, like we've done in penalty kill, we forced them to shoot around the boards, and then he goes to center ice, and then if it's clear, then he could shoot it through the net. But it was good for me. I loved everything. And then when he scored the second goal, shorthanded against Pitt in the playoffs, I mean, that was unbelievable too. And so, but what he's done he created how good he shot the puck. It really changed the game for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so back to it. 1989 rolls around. You guys are in the playoffs. You're playing, at one point you're playing against the Montreal Canadiens. Young Montreal defenseman Chris Chelios comes up with what I consider to be one of the dirtiest hits in hockey history. He cheap shots you, you fall to the ice, hit your head. So you end up missing one game, but it looked worse, especially on TV. Do you think, looking back at it now with everything we know today, had that happened today, do you think you would have missed more than one game?
I think that it was like I was out the whole night, and so I didn't know what was going to take some time. But because we played every second day, it gave me a chance to only miss one game because we had the concussion testing that you had to pass before we could be able to play again. But the hit was unbelievably bad. So I still remember that, hey, listen, I didn't feel that well after the series, but by me actually kind of losing in the playoffs, it gave me a year to heal a little better. But I think, the doctors control now, like what you have to do, or might take a week or something like that, like the NFL. So I could have maybe missed another couple games, but I did pass the baseline.
Mm-hmm. All right. So to me, I mean, I was a young kid, and to me, it was clear that hit completely changed the series around. And Game 6 rolls around. You guys are down. It's towards the end of the game. Your goalie, Ron Hextall, takes matters into his own hands. He pretty much charges Chris Chelios, slams him. He gets a 12-game suspension starting the following season. Nothing is done about Chris Chelios' hit. No suspensions, no fines, no nothing. What was going through your mind when all that brouhaha was going on the ice, the whole Hextall, Chelios, all that stuff?
Well, I loved it because it was a player sticking up for me because of the hit. And so I'll respect him for the rest of my life for what he did. It tells everybody what a teammate he was, and how he's sticking up for other people. So I loved what he did, and to this day, I respect him for it.
All right. So now, fast forward a year later, 1990 comes, and the Flyers are clearly in rebuilding mode. They trade Dave Poulin away and a couple of other guys. Trade deadline comes, and after 11 unbelievable seasons, you're traded away to the Boston Bruins, joining Dave Poulin, as a matter of fact. Did you know, or did you have any indication that the Flyers were trying to, or were going to move you if the right offer came along? And, how did that feel? I mean, the Flyers were the only team you had ever known. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, that year I had major surgery in my left hand. I had a clot in my hand that I had to remove the artery. And so I missed 27 games. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a little time to feel better. But at the end of the year, I still played a couple games and, did well. But, then I think that what they were trying to do is put the younger guys in charge. And then, so like, I think that year, Jay Snyder was supposed to run the team, and it probably didn't work as well as they thought because they traded all the leaders like Poulin and myself. And until they lost the last 5 years without making it into the playoffs. So it tells you a story of how the leadership makes a big difference and how you play. And so maybe, I think after Jay got fired, then they got Len Lindros, and, they started to win a little bit.
All right. So you've been retired for about 30 years now, close to it. As crazy as it sounds, there's an entire generation of hockey fans and Flyers fans who have never really seen you play live other than YouTube videos and, film and stuff like that. So if you would allow me just for a second here, I'm just going to go over a couple of stats, all right? 16 seasons in the NHL. You had 4 seasons of 40 goals or more and another of 39. 4 seasons of 90 points or more, including 2 97-point seasons. You're 4th all-time in games played as a Flyer, 2nd all-time in team goals, 3rd all-time in assists. You were 2nd for the longest time, over 30 years, until Claude Giroux passed you just not too long ago. 3rd all-time in points with 849, 3rd all-time in power play goals, 2nd all-time in game-winning goals, 2nd all-time in shots taken. I mean, the offensive numbers are just incredible. But here's the thing that always gets me, and that people, even who grew up during my time, may not remember. To this day, you are still the 7th all-time in team history in shorthanded goals and 4th all-time in plus-minus with a whopping 299 plus. Now, included in those seasons was a season of plus 47, a season of plus 45, a season of plus 44, a season of plus 35, 34. I mean, in 16 seasons, you were a minus player twice. One of them, you only played 17 games due to injury, and the other, you were a -3. So obviously, you took pride in playing a complete game, right? Kind of like for this generation, maybe like a Claude Giroux or a Sean Couturier style of play. How much pride did you take in that? Was it something that you had to practice at, or was it something that more or less came easy to you? How did that complete game you had come about?
Well, in the 80s, I had great players beside me, like with Bob Clarke and Leach and Barber, and then with Kerr and Tiemann, Poulin and Howe and McCrimmon and you name about it. Linsman and Holmgren made a big difference with my life, and so, but I knew how to play and win. And, that's why I was a plus player, because I took pride in playing two-way. I was consistent every game. I didn't have a bad game here and there. But I think for most of the people around, I'm still proud of what I've done, especially because I figured out in the playoffs, you have to be much better. You play against the better players, and so you have to find a way to play it even better and at a higher level. And so with my stats in the playoffs, like I'm #1 for the left wingers in the history of the game with 148 points in 160 games. I'm really proud of that. I was in 5 Stanley Cup finals. Some guys never even get to one final. So I'm proud of how I contributed, and I'm looking forward to just keeping up with stories like this. It helps with me with the press, and especially me with being the Flyers ambassador. Plus I did the radio for 9 years for the Philadelphia Flyers. So my whole life in the last 40 years has been like 30 years in the Flyers ambassador, and also I'm on the ambassador or the alumni on their board for the last 4 years, and so I try to give back as much as I can.
All right. So there's no question you bleed black and orange, man. It shows. We mentioned Claude Giroux. he's just had a phenomenal career up until this point. And, you know, when you think about since 2010, he is fourth in the league overall in points, behind only Patrick Kane, Sidney Crosby, and Alex Ovechkin. So what a phenomenal career he's had so far. He's 34 points behind you for third all-time in team history scoring. So, and he's only 68 points behind Bill Barber for second, by the way. So realistically, next season at some point, he might be the second all-time point getter for the Flyers. What do you think, or what do you feel when you see a player like that coming up and just, you know, on the verge of surpassing you in really in team lore, right? It's, you know, how are you feeling about that? What is your approach to it? Do you plan on being at the game if he ever surpasses you? Chances are next season. And what is your current relationship with him?
I don't really say too much with current players because they're by themselves, and you know. But some of the alumni like Hartnell and Timonen and a couple of guys like that, you know, I just moved close to where they are, so I talk with them all the time. And but you know, for me, it's just like, Claude has been there for the last 12 years, but the game has changed. You know, it used to, you get points like if we're 3-on-3 and overtime and 4-on-4 and 3-on-3 and overtime. So, you know, it's just, and people don't get hurt as much as we did at the time. Like there's no hitting as much. And so it's kind of easier, you know, to stay out of injury. And so like, but the game has changed. And so, but, you know, I adapted with that too. And so, but I love what Giroux has done.
So, yeah, so you mentioned the game has changed, and it has a lot of different, you know, not as much clutch and grab and hanging on to players and fighting has almost all but disappeared, instigator rule and all this. What do you think is the biggest difference between the game today and the game when you played it?
I think it's the speed. You know, the goalies have better equipment, but you still have to think about where you have to be. And I think that for a guy like Claude, like if he scored at a little bit more goals, like he goes in games where he doesn't score that much. And so I think he needs to be a little more consistent with that. You know, his assists are always good because they had good power play games, and so it just to me it just the better players in the league like an Ovechkin and Crosman, they know how to play two-way and how to, if they want to score and be part of winning a championship, and so that makes a big difference. But I think the Flyers team has done really well this last year with the new coaching, and I think that they've done it the right way. So they're all set, so I can't wait for the playoffs to get started again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, your buddy Ron Hextall, he really set the Flyers up really well with the drafting and all the young guys that have come up. They've had a phenomenal season so far. You know, what do you think, what has impressed you the most about this season's Philadelphia Flyers?
I think the coaching, yeah, and the players. It's just let's face it. You know, a guy like Hart is sort of like a Pelle Lindbergh or a Hextall. You know, they know that he's going to be the guy, and look what he did last year. Like the home games, like they won a lot. But it was all because he kept them in the game, and then they found a way to win in the third period. And so that, to me, makes a big difference, having a goalie, or two goalies that work really well. And so that makes a big difference in the whole outlook of the game.
All right. So now, obviously, the NHL is on hiatus due to this pandemic. As an ex-player who played at the absolute highest level, how hard is it, do you think, for the players to come back and get back into the groove and get their on ice timing back to where it should be, ready for the playoffs? Is it something that they could do it in a week, or is it something that takes a little bit more time?
No, I think it should happen pretty fast because these guys are paid a lot of money and they're in good shape, so they work out all the time. They probably don't drink as much as we did, and so that helps. But we have fun, and they'll be ready. And now, because it's been 3 months since everybody's been healed, so it'll make a big difference, for all the teams that are there, because they'll be healthy and ready to go, and so but it won't take them long to get ready. I mean, they'll be all ready.
Okay, so the NHL announced 2014 playoff. In your opinion, with the injuries of players coming back, the 82 game schedule not as condensed anymore, and the regular season over basically, do you think this Stanley Cup will be probably one of the hardest to win? And if so, do you think the team who wins it should have an asterisk next to their name?
No, I don't think it'll. As long as they're going to be playing, you still have to win. And even if they play five game series at the start, then they switch to seven games. Usually, this 7 games, the people that are better come up winning. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I'm not sure what's going to happen at the start of the next year, or whether they're going to start later, or they probably have to, because in August I think they're thinking about starting something, but I'm not sure about how that's going to work. But everyone's here ready to win a Stanley Cup.
Amen. We want to see that in Philly for sure. All right, so you've been retired for a while. You're an ambassador. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing these days, and how you're keeping busy, and what you do for a living, basically.
Yeah, so I've been working with Wolf Commercial Real Estate in Marlton the last 5.5 years. I've been licensed right at the start, and so I've been doing some deals for that. Office work, industrial, you name it, we can do it. And then we can also have a capital division that we can give loans to. So I'm usually in the office every day, but I just have to stay away but we run a couple of charity events. Like we do some charity golf, where we have in September 17th, we're going to do the golf at Ramble Red. And then we usually did a celebrity hockey event every September, but now we might change that to next January or February. But I use 6 former alumni and split up the teams. Last year we raised $80,000 for the 6 charities that we're supporting. And so I've been doing that, and staying in front of all the people. It keeps me busy with all the things that are going on. And then also with Bancroft brain injury people, I just started with them a year ago, and to give back to them, because I had a massive stroke almost 5 years ago, where I almost lost my life, and I couldn't talk at the start. The only thing I could say was and Bernie Pront just came to me, but it took me a long time to get much better, especially my speech, because it took me a year and a half, because I had to relearn with my brain how to talk and how to say the things. I still have aphasia, which means that the words don't come out the same way. But I've done a couple different things to make myself much better. And also, on the board of Bancroft, we have the big event this Friday at 7:30. It's a virtual Bancroft butterfly ball, but we'll raise some money from that. We hopefully will raise $500,000 or $600,000 to help the people that are there. And so I do that. I visit with them. I just did a video of hockey, me getting back on my skates at Bancroft, which I love, and a lot of people saw that. So it gives people hope about what they're going through in their life. And so I'm really proud to be helping these other people too. And also Bancroft is one of our charity hockey guys and golf that we support too.
Great. So yeah, we're so fantastically joyous and happy that you're back in tip-top shape and with good health. So that's always fantastic. If some of our listeners and viewers require your services at Wolf, what is the best way to contact you?
Well, you can either go to wolfcre.com or my brianpropp.com websites. Because there's a lot of information for Wolf Commercial Real Estate and my Brian Propp website. There's there's another thing like I'm soon I'm just going to be signing up a licensing agreement for my Guffaw cigars. It's been taking a little time, but I want to do it the right way so that I don't have to worry about the manufacturing of cigars, but basically a licensor for Vivente cigars. So on my Brian Propp website, there's a way that they can, check it out. And I don't really want people to order right now, but in another couple of weeks, if they want to order that, because what I'm doing is I'm doing 425 boxes of 10 for my 425 goals. They're going to be special edition, numbered, a little prize in there. It costs about $140 for the 10 cigars, which isn't that bad. And so I'm just waiting to get that all finalized.
Wow. So cigars, I did see that on your webpage, and I'm just curious, has it been something you've always had a passion for?
Yeah, because when I was young, like I loved playing golf. And when I played golf, I usually had a cigar, and I still do. But a couple of years ago, I went with my son the Dominican Republic to visit a factory in the Dominican Republic. So we learned how to roll the cigars and make the cigars, and they're all handmade. And we did a little trip with Ken Dunnick and a couple other people. So we went for a week, and it was a good experience for me and my son. And so I came up with the idea about doing the Guffaw cigars because I got that trademarked from Howie Mandel, of course. And but it's special because to me, the Guffaw means a hearty laughter and excitement, and to never give up, and just to keep going as fast as you can, as well as you can.
Okay, great. So Brian, we've come towards the end of our show here, and this last piece here, I always like to do with guests I call it rapid fire. It's basically about a dozen or so questions with nothing to do with hockey, just basically getting to know you. So keep in mind, it's just you and me here. Forget about the millions of people viewing, listening. It's just you and I. Just give me a one-word or small phrase answer to each of these questions. Ready?
Yeah.
Let's go. All right. So if Brian Propp had never been a hockey player, chances are he would have had a long career in?
An accountant.
Really? Interesting. Okay. Your first celebrity crush?
Madonna.
All right. Your favorite band, or musician?
Rush.
Oh, fantastic. All right. The greatest pro athlete outside of the hockey world?
Ali.
All right. Would you rather spend a day in the country or a day at the beach?
The beach.
The most amazing place you've ever visited?
In Moscow.
All right. If you could be fluent in any other language other than English, what would it be?
Spanish.
All right. If you were on death row, what would you have your last meal be?
Pasta.
Dog lover or cat lover?
Cat.
Your current pastime or hobby?
Golf.
When it comes to movies, do you prefer watching comedy, mystery, or sci-fi?
Comedy.
If you could recommend one TV show or series for our audience members to binge watch, what would it be?
That would be Ozark.
Ozarks. All right. And yeah, so that was it. Listen, thank you so much for doing this. On a personal note, if I may, this has been such a treat for me. You were one of my heroes growing up. You really were. Between you and Tim Kerr, I'd go back and forth who was my favorite, but I loved you both so much. And this is really a dream come true for me, just spending the time of speaking with you and really presenting you to maybe another generation of fans who, other than YouTube, haven't really watched you live. So it's been absolutely fantastic. And thank you for joining us. And I really hope we could do it again at some point in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it. Good job.
No problem. Thank you.